So I wanted to talk to you,
On
yes.
that point, and then those cases that are unsubstantiated, do you have a measure where you then follow up if those families are referred later?
So unsubstantiated cases typically do not end up in referrals. If there is something that is significant enough to end up in a referral that you would follow up on, that ought to be sent to what we call ongoing services or family preservation services. That means that there's something significant enough for us to continue contact with the family. This is an issue also that we as a field struggle with. At what point do you break ties with the family and move on and let them get on with their life? There are oftentimes that we have concerns that don't rise to that level. We make referrals outside the normal system for things that might be of assistance to them, but we really don't have cause in most of those cases to continue to have a presence. Stephanie?
Bobby, do we look at if we have an instance of abuse or even worse, death, and do we look back and see if any of those were unsubstantiated?
That was my question as well.
Oh.
I don't think I phrased my question very well, but that was the same question I was asking. If you have an instance later where a
Yes.
child is abused, can you look back and see if you had unsubstantiated a previous?
Yes, we do that. Anytime a child dies that we've had contact with in child welfare within the last 5 years, we do a complete retrospective look at those cases, including any unsubstantiations. And thinking back just at the ones I've looked at since I've been here, and I was sharing with somebody earlier, I'm going on 90 days, so we're moving on. The ones that I have looked at, I can tell you that some of those in their history within 5 years have had an unsubstantiation somewhere in that history. The unsubstantiations in those cases really have been of less concern to me than when we had reason to believe that there were needed services and the policy at the time didn't mandate that we follow that. That was under a practice called diversion that was done away with at the beginning of Governor Deal's term. So that is something we look at. Long answer to a short question. So I wanted to talk to you, and this is a fancy slide here, so you'll have to touch it 3 times on cue. So I wanted to give you an idea of what the effect of caseload size and supervision span does to a child welfare system. So when you're looking at these, and probably can see them better on your handout, the houses are representing here a case. That could be a family with 1 to 10 children. I remember one recently with 10. And so this would be an ideal caseload. The governor's goal by 2017 is to get us to 1 to 15. This is what we know through research to be a reasonable size caseload. Next. Now this, and I know somebody that is as detail-oriented as some of the folks here will call me out on this. The average, of course, was 21.19, I think, odd cases. If you count these, there are 23 houses here. So this was me working late last night and pulling the wrong number. So this is one caseworker, 23 cases. So you can see just the volume of contacts that are required are increasing. Now, the next version, this is a caseload example from Gwinnett County, the worker that you've heard me talk about in June. I went up to ride with her, and I have to tell you, she's a very dynamic young lady. She grew up in foster care in California. Could not read when she came into foster care at age 14. Her foster mother taught her to read and told her every day as she left the house, "You are my child, you are going to be a success." And so she shared all this with me as we were riding house to house. And about halfway through the ride, I said, "How many cases are you handling now?" She said, 83. And honestly, I had to muffle my reaction because I didn't want her to see me react to this, but this is too many. This is more than any person can handle.
That's an anomaly, I guess.
It is an anomaly, and it's becoming more of an anomaly now, Mr. Chairman. And but there have been caseloads throughout the state that have hit this level and some higher in the past.
Spread out to others within that same district?
The turnover is not equal from county to county. So for instance, in Gwinnett County, we have probably a 35% turnover rate amongst investigators. So what you do as a supervisor is you try to equalize those caseloads within the resources that you have. The county director should be doing the same. There seems to have been a hesitancy to pull from other counties prior to my arriving. You know, I laid the expectation on day one that if you've got high caseloads in one region, that's our children. It does not matter what region they're in. And so, pardon me?
Is that Region 15?
That is Region 15, and then that was a mid-June caseload. Those are coming down.
Was still the highest in the state.
It is. It is. And like I said, we have additional staff coming on up there to help with those things. We've also redirected staff from all over the state in order to be able to get them there. Plus, I've taken 15 of my staff from state office who have prior experience in conducting investigations and assigned them to that region until we complete that reduction of overdue cases.
Bobby, I think it's important to also say that the turnover rate has a lot to do, really it is burnout rate.
Yes.
It is, and it's what Bobby talked about, the time it takes to get trained, and then the frustration. Right. When the students went across the stage, and they were social work graduates, and I asked them, people said, did you talk to every graduate? And I said, the social workers I did, I said, do you have a job? If not, DFCS will hire you. If not, DFCS. And I said that to my BSW, Bachelor of Social Work, and my MSW. Half of them said, I will never work there. It's impossible. So what they've heard, what they hear, and they're social work majors. So we're recruiting people from different disciplines to work with some of the most difficult families with probably more bureaucracy and paperwork than any other agency has, which has to have the due diligence. But the frustration level is high, and some of that is how do you do the training and do the families and do all of that at the same time. And I think the reality is there are people who can do the job. We're also paying the lowest salaries for people to do the most critical working with our children and families. But I think that's the reality, and I know when I heard the caseload even in Savannah, when I met with the DFCS director, I was also just, you know, there's no way that one individual can stay on top of that, so we're already setting people up to fail without the kind of personnel support that they need. And I think that has a lot to do with the challenges and trying to make the right decisions, which are decisions that are difficult to make.
It is extremely difficult, and in reading some of these cases where bad outcomes occur, you have people with large caseloads that are trying to make decisions on a split-second basis, and these are 23-year-olds typically, that are not fully trained oftentimes, and they're trying to decide between making contact with two immediate response cases, meaning that a child is in imminent danger. And so they're making the best decisions they can at that time. I would tell you that the turnover of staff is and high caseloads is a insidious problem. It is something that you can handle as a county director on a short-term basis. You can exhort staff, you can encourage them, you can pay them overtime, you can do a number of things with staff to help them get through a short-term rise in caseloads. What is very difficult and almost impossible to manage is what we've had with caseloads that have exceeded recommended maximums for since 2007. That is, you know, that's just my view of it, is it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain a system operating functionally with caseloads that high for a long period of time.
And I'll follow up on that is the money that you received, the extra appropriations this past year has been not only for, or as the former question, was not only for increasing your numbers of caseworkers,
yes,
but also increasing salaries, was it not?
It actually was not for increasing salaries. No, it was. It went for primarily caseworkers and also supervisors. We directed some of those that money to hiring supervisors. We were at a 1-to-9 ratio when I got here. We hired additional supervisors to get us to 1 to 7, but not, to my understanding, not any increase. Yes. Yeah. Stephanie? Okay. So this is, you know, just what we were talking about. This is some
Just for clarification
Sure.
on that, there was just the 1% included in the budget that was included in the budget for all state employees,
Yes.
and it was for
Everybody,
merit-based.
but I thought they were doing a
Yes.
reclassification, salary-wise, of the caseworkers.
There's a reclassification coming, but in looking across our staff, there are very few people. It would basically affect those that whose current salary falls below the minimum of the new range, and that is a very limited number of staff for us. This is just some research that talks about the effect of high caseloads. You know, I just have to say it again, and I don't think it would be overemphasized, that high caseloads for extended periods of time and regular turnover as we have is a recipe for disaster long term. The other part of this that I think Dr. Dozier was alluding to is also the effect on retaining staff. Even for those people who are highly committed to what we do, maintaining these very high caseloads with the stress that you're under and all the other things that you have to deal with over time really wears on people, and so it's extremely difficult to maintain a full cadre of staff during times like this. So I also wanted to expand on the worker scenario to give you an idea of what an ideal supervisory scenario would look like, just graphically. So again, you'll recognize the houses and the caseworkers. This is your ideal scenario. This is one supervisor to 5 case managers with 15 cases each at 75 cases. The expectation here is that a supervisor is having daily contact with their workers, talking about the cases on their caseload. My expectation of a supervisor is they know every case well enough to step into court and testify on that case should the worker not be available. This is a current average caseload scenario, 1 supervisor to 7 case managers, and based on the 23, which we know is a little errant, that would be 161 cases. But the point being that you can see the span of control for that supervisor is unmanageable, even at the current level. It is a very difficult thing for them to do. A lot of the 15 staff that I'm sending to Gwinnett County are going to go in a supervisory capacity because those supervisors need a break. You really depend, especially when you have young staff on the front line, you depend on a supervisor to have the kind of knowledge and experience that it takes to guide a young staff person. They have not seen all the things that they need to see to be able to react appropriately in each and every situation, especially when you have cases that are particularly hard and you have parents who are particularly adept at spinning yarns and leading people to believe things that aren't true, which we see oftentimes in really hard cases. So I would like to claim this as my own, but this is not, I'm sorry, Bob.